Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and yesterday Hamas posted a video on Twitter, X, that is purporting to show them manufacturing what they call the Al Ghul sniper rifles in some secret bunker, presumably in Gaza. This is nonsense, and I thought we should take a minute and let's go through this video and see what's actually being shown in it, because I've manufactured rifles. I've been in a lot of rifle factories. I've done hand loading. I've seen a lot of hand loading. I've seen ammunition factories, and this video includes none of that. So if we start from the very beginning here, what we see is they've set up a room. Obviously, they're just hanging green curtains to hide where they actually are, some stage lighting. We have two lathes set up in this room, and they've got two rooms here that we'll see. This one, we can actually see a whole bunch of complete rifles that have been disassembled. So over on the left, we've got 5 barrels on a table, along with 3 of the optics mounting housings, the barrel trunnions. On the right-hand table, there are actually 2 rifles with their barrels removed at the end of the table. There's a couple of complete rifles that you just see a close-up on the butt plate and they're facing away. And then there's a stack of rifle components, most notably 3 pre-assembled muzzle brakes there on the table. So if we start this, we've got the 2 guys working on lathes, and they clearly want you to think that these are barrels on the lathes. However, what they're doing here is turning the outside profile of the barrel. The difficult element in manufacturing a barrel. Like, if you want to convince me that you're actually manufacturing barrels, what I want to see is the rifling process. Because otherwise, you got nothing. Yeah, it's easy to put a piece of steel on a lathe and turn it to get a different outside diameter. You can see, in fact, in this second shot, where we see the end spindle holding the barrel in place, that the barrel is not bored out. This is a solid piece of bar stock. If you're making a barrel, the first thing you're going to do is center bore it, what they actually call gun drill it. Then you're going to ream it, then you're going to rifle it, and then lastly, you're going to turn the outside diameter. Immediately on the next shot, we see them turning the outside profile of this piece of steel, and there's smoke coming off of it. You don't want smoke coming off. They're not running lubricant on this. That's a problem. That's not how you manufacture precision anything, much less precision sniper rifles. But moving on, yeah, we get a second little shot of some more smoke there. Then the guy's polishing the thing with a cloth while it's turning, which is not practical. All right, now he's taking the tube out, hands it off to another guy. We have another shot of the other lathe here, and you can see that they're running a boring drill bit into a piece of bar stock, which is fine. It's not entirely clear to me what they're theoretically making in this shot. I suspect it's supposed to be bolt heads. And okay, this shot, this is just weird. Like, this is another perfect example of how what they're doing looks like machining, but it's wrong in all sorts of ways. So we have to go through this frame by frame for you to see it, but at the very beginning of this, you can see he's got that boring drill bit, and he is pulling the drill bit out of out of the piece of material, but he's holding the piece of material up as he pulls the bit out, and then he just lifts that component away, which tells me that component is not attached to the actual material that's clamped into the lathe. He was not actually doing any machining. He just had it finished. He had the bit inside the piece, and he pulls the bit out and takes the piece off. If this were trying to purportedly show an actual machining operation, you would bore that center hole while this component was still part of the long piece of bar stock, so that the lathe would actually hold it. You get the hole as deep as you want it, then you'd come in with a cutoff tool and you'd part the piece off. But he's not doing that. He's doing something that, machining-wise, doesn't make any sense at all. Now, he's going to do some measuring. He puts that part down. That's the best shot we have of what these parts are. Again, I think they're supposed to be bolt heads. Because, spoiler alert, the Al Ghul is not a domestic Gazan or Palestinian designed firearm. The Al Ghul is actually an Iranian AM-50, which is like the Steyr HS-50 that we have at home. Iran purchased like 800 HS-50s a bunch of years ago. They then reverse engineered it and made a really crude copy of it that they call the AM-50 that they have provided to all sorts of basically terror and terror associated groups. They've shown up with the Houthis in Yemen. They showed up in Iraq with a couple of different forces. They've showed up in Syria, and they've shown up in Gaza. And spoiler again, that's what we're looking at here is an Iranian manufactured AM-50. And this looks like the bolt head off of one of those. Now, in order to complete this as a bolt head, you're going to need to have some tools other than a lathe to make some other cuts on it. We don't ever see it any farther than this. I think they're making dummy parts for the sake of video here. Now, moving on, we get a quick shot of an AM-50 with the barrel removed there, and then it's on to an actual mill. This is the part where I think we're actually seeing them manufacture something for real. They've taken what is either steel or aluminum, I'm not sure which. They're cutting an overall profile, and then we see a shot, we see a shot first where the guy's pulled one off of the mill and he's measuring it. Like, let's measure a random part to look good on camera. This is the beginning of a scope mount. And I think if they're manufacturing anything for real, I think it's scope mounts, because we see the raw piece of material, basically the sort of an extruded profile, except it's not extruded, it's a milled profile. We then see it further machined into the bottom section of a scope base. Then he puts this down on the table next to several other components, and we can see he's got some that are unfinished, some that are finished, and he's got a stack of the top bracket to go over the scope in that scope mount. This is an example where we actually see a selection of parts in order in a reasonable set of stages of actual manufacture. The rest of this, like what we see with those barrels and those bolt heads, reminds me perfectly of the time of a show like Sons of Guns. If you remember that, that was 10 years plus ago now. I was actually on an episode of Sons of Guns, the very last episode, in fact, and I got to see the sausage making of how they make a TV show about allegedly making guns, when in reality, just like this, the actual gun was manufactured in an entirely different place long before the show was filmed. They brought in the actual gun, and then they would bring in like a demilled parts kit from the gun and some random raw scrap material, and they would cut together a series of clips of guy turning something on a lathe, guy milling something or drilling something, guy with, on Sons of Guns, there'd usually be a guy with a grinder going, throwing sparks because it looks really good for the camera. And then maybe they'd show a barrel that had been torch cut in half, like, oh, he's grinding the slag off of this torch cut barrel. And then the next scene, poof, we magically have a complete barrel. Well, they're insinuating that the barrel has been somehow repaired, re-welded together from pieces. In reality, you have a piece of garbage barrel here, and you have an already existing complete barrel over here, and through the magic of editing, one is implied to become the other. But with these scope mounts, we're actually seeing enough steps of progress here that I suspect they might actually be making those. Now, moving on, we've got, okay, so guy's gonna pick up one of these barrels, he's gonna go fit it into the gun. Next bit is he's assembling a bolt head, but note that these are all totally completed pieces. There is absolutely nothing in that shot that couldn't be take a complete Iranian rifle, field strip it, like, well, or detail strip it, take all the pieces apart, and then turn on the camera and put the pieces back together. And because you're in a clean room, that's definitely not a clean room, it's just some tarps hanging up in some building, and you're wearing rubber gloves, it looks like you're doing some factory assembly. No, you're doing the same thing as just reassembling the gun that you just took apart. Next shot here, he is putting together a muzzle brake. This is, again, it's the muzzle brake on the AM-50 is basically a clamshell. It's a top and a bottom, and you put them together, and then there's 6 hex head screws that lock the thing together. Now he's going to screw it onto the gun. He's going to mount a scope. This gets to one of the most interesting shots in the video, which is the marking on the side of this gun, because this says something like Al-Qassam Brigade Sniper Rifle, 12.7 by 99 millimeter. 12.7 by 99, by the way, is 50 Browning. So in in the Middle East, you might find the US 50 caliber, which is 50 Browning. You might find the Soviet 50 caliber, which is 12.7 by 108. In theory, you might also find the Soviet 14.5 by 114 millimeter. This is very specifically marked 12 Browning, 12.7, 50 caliber Browning, which is interesting. The HS-50 was also 50 Browning. There is a Syrian copy of the HS-50 that's actually in 12.7 by 108, and this is a pretty good suggestion that we're not looking at that gun here. However, these markings are not advertised by Iran on their AM-50s. And I believe this is the first time that we've seen these markings. AM-50s have been captured in Palestine as well as other places before, and they've had other markings. In fact, I'll link in the description below to a page by Conflict Armament Research that has a really good report on the AM-50 with its really crude, dot pixel or dot punch markings. So you can check that out if you're interested. These are much more, much better done, much more aesthetically proper markings. They look here too deep to be laser engraved. Maybe they are a big roll stamp, I suspect in Iran at the factory. Could also be pantographed, where you have an engraving tool connected to well, you can look up a pantograph. These might be pantographed markings, hard to say. So moving on. Okay, now they're done with the guns. They're going to pack them up. I'm not sure what the writing, the patch on the rifle case is, but you got some very swanky looking dudes in camo. We're going to set up on the range. We're going to use a laser, binoculars, get set, click the scope some, because that certainly always looks good on camera. We'll look through the scope, then pop the cap up. Okay. Now we're going to get to the ammo part, and they do some nice editing here. The guy pulls out a round of 12.7 ammo, and now they want to show you their manufacturing process of precision ammo. And there's some stuff in here that is definitely wrong. So first off, we're going to see a lot of steel cases in this segment of the video. Steel cases are tricky to reload. It can be done, but there's a lot more that goes into it, and it's not the sort of thing you do to make precision ammo. Precision ammo is going to be brass cased, and ideally it's going to be virgin unfired brass. You can reload cases, certainly a lot of people do, you can do it well, but if you've got the manufacturing facilities to make complete rifles, as Hamas would like us to believe from this video, you will also be able to get new production brass. Note that they have their own head stamp on it, Qassam, allegedly. But we don't see that head stamp once we get into the reloading section here. So we're going to go through a series of steps. This is, in theory, priming. We've got a guy who is loading powder. Now, this is allegedly okay. Like, he's actually got a digital scale there, and he's measuring a weight of powder, which is correct. That's how you would want to do it. But he has a pretty generic sort of scoop that he's using, and the way you do this professionally, the way you do it properly, is you load just a little bit under the amount of powder you need, and then you have a special trickler. It's a little tool that just drops like 1 grain at a time. You've got a cup of powder and a threaded tube that comes out, and as you turn the tube, the threading inside the tube will, it'll push powder down the tube very slowly, and so you get 1 or 2 grains at a time dropping onto your scale, into your case. And that's how you say, well, okay, I've got 18.5 grains of powder, and I need 18.8. Click, 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 18.7, 18.8. Okay. If you just have a big scoop, it's a lot harder to do that, because you're going to go, well, I need a little bit, bloop, oh, okay, I went over, now I have to like take the cup off the scale and dump a few grains out and go back and forth. It's not an effective way to do this. Again, we have an assembly line sort of reloading procedure going on here. They would have a trickler if they were doing this for real, and they don't. Or at least they're not using it in the video. Now he's pouring powder in. They have a little bit out of order. They've then got him trimming the case. You really trim the case before you put a powder and primer in it. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that whoever did the video editing here, who is clearly pretty good. This is a well-produced video. The video editor may not necessarily know the proper order of operations. Now, here's where we get to a really interesting scene for me, and that's the seating the bullets. So you can see here, he's pulling the bullet in, and he's got it nicely held so that you can't really tell if it's an empty case and just a bullet, which I'm pretty sure it is. The moment he sets it in the press, we'll freeze here. It's the very first frame, before he starts to pull the lever down, you'll see that the bullet is basically right at the top of travel of this press. And he's holding it again, so you can't tell exactly how that bullet's seated in the case. Now he's going to pull the thing down. He's going to press the bullet down. Before his hand clears, the camera cuts away. It cuts to a different shot of him spinning the bullet, which isn't like, okay, whatever. I don't know what that is. Now he's let the press all the way back up, and as he starts to pull the case out, you can see that the overall length of the case is like exactly the same height as what he's got available in this press, which means the bullet was not very far out of the case when he put it in there, because there's no extra room above a fully loaded, fully seated bullet in what is allegedly a seating press here. So, and he pulls it out, and then he goes and sets it in a tray of completed ammunition with a variety of different types of cases. We've got some lacquered steel in the back there. It looks like we've got some unlacquered steel in the front. A weird mixture. Again, if you're trying to make precision ammunition, you're going to be doing it. You want all of your components to be consistent and identical. So let's see, now we go back to the long view, guy pouring powder in another case. And now we've moved on to taking ammunition and putting it into supply crates. So I don't think we saw any actual loading of ammunition here. Frankly, the fact that they've got all of these supply crates, because you can see a big pile of them in the room, suggests to me that they got a bunch of ammunition and they took it out, made a charade of hand loading it, and then put it back into the crates. Because if you're hand loading the stuff, you're not getting your components in crates that are specifically sized for completed ammo. You're getting components as boxes of bullets, flats of primers, a bottle of powder, boxes of cases, which are shipped in boxes that are the length of cases, not the length of complete ammunition. So we've got a bunch of these crates that they're now reloading, and presto, magic of editing, we're back out to the range. Again, this is a slickly produced video. And okay, now the guy is going to put the round into the gun. Again, we can see some more details on the guns here, and this lines up exactly with Iranian AM-50 rifles. The bolt handle's right, the scope mounting rail is right. Let's see, the bipod looks right, but it's a little hard to tell because we don't get a real clear shot of it. Okay, here are the guys shooting. Lastly, it's interesting to note that they're shooting incendiary or observation explosive ammunition on these steel targets, which looks really cool on camera. I know that firsthand. It's awesome. But those are not precision projectiles. And if you want to make a precision sniper rifle and make long-range precise hits, you're going to do it with precision manufactured cartridges. And the incendiary stuff is made to a much lower standard of fit and finish and quality control and exact consistency. Not quality control, but it's made to a lower standard of consistency because you don't need 1 MOA incendiaries or observation explosive rounds. Same thing, like if you go and look at surplus American 50 cal ammo, there's a lot of AP on the market, M8, armor piercing, black tip. It's not going to group nearly as well, like anywhere near as well, out of your Barrett, your whatever 50 cal rifle you have, as like just loaded AMAX or hand loaded FMJ ammunition. So anyway, we get some cool high-speed shots of explosions on their targets, and then that's the end of the video. So there you go. I'm pretty sure that the Al Ghul is nothing more than, in fact, essentially is a rebadged Steyr AM-50. If you take a look at that report from Conflict Armament Research, you'll see that the AM-50 is not a particularly great rifle. It's going to probably work perfectly well for Hamas with their sort of tactics and procedures and typical engagement scenarios, but this is not a high-end precision sniper rifle by any means. So it's a step above the like handmade out of a machine gun barrel, which is, by the way, the typical thing that you'll see when you see in places like Syria, for example. There were some groups in Syria, in fact, I have a video on this, who were making anti-material rifles. The way they got around that barrel manufacturing issue that I talked about at the beginning here, was by using essentially surplused or salvaged machine gun barrels. So like, oh, we have this machine gun barrel in 12.7 American or 12.7 Russian or 14.5. We will build the rest of the rifle around this barrel because the barrel is the one thing we can't easily make. We don't see that in this video. Again, if Hamas wanted us to believe that they were actually manufacturing guns, they would be taking Dishka barrels or M2 barrels or something like that, turning them down and fitting them to newly manufactured rifle receivers. But we see none of that. The only thing we can see 100% in this video is that they have complete AM-50s that they have disassembled and put back together, and they want you to think that they're manufacturing stuff. So anyway, this was sort of my short notice hot take reaction to this video. It came out yesterday, and I thought to myself, you know what? I've been involved in a lot of this sort of procedure. I wonder what they're actually doing in this video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.